This morning, we're going to continue the discussion of this week's topic, the topic of forgiveness. Today, we're going to take a look at the insidious effect of not being able to forget and not being able to move on with our lives and not forgiving people and moving on with lives that would be in line with God's plan for us. Many people are plagued in their lives it destroys relationships between children and their parents, between brothers and sisters, between husbands and wives, between members of congregations, between friends that have been friends a long time, by never being able to get past wrongs that have happened in the past. The story is said that elephants have long memories, that an elephant never forgets. But they're not the only ones. Those who have ever been mistreated or wronged, especially by a friend, many times have some of the longest memories of any creature alive. Grudges seem to be easy to pick up and carry, but they're very difficult to lay aside and forget. But if we want the blessings of God, we better think twice about that. It applies not only to the blessings immediately right now. It's something like that illustration I've already used this week, and I use it frequently. When I talk with people, I use it from the pulpit often because I'm simple, and things that stick in my mind, maybe a little bit will stick in some of you that are a lot smarter than I am. But I've often used the illustration of having picked up a backpack full of bricks. And each brick represents something wrong that was done to you. And perhaps something wrong, the heavier bricks, or something wrong that was done to you by someone that should love you and should care about you. And those wrongs pile up and begin, and with one in our backpack, we can move on. But then you get 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 or 12, and every step we take, it seems like we're just weighted down by the weight of those. And even with the ability to take off that backpack and to remove that load that's weighing us down, we often continue carrying them. We often speak about the bad things that others did to us in the past, as if that's, by remembering that's some badge of honor. That's not the example that Jesus left for us. Let me encourage you and urge you today, for your sake, take the backpack off. Unpack the bricks of wrongs that have been done to you, and live your life. Begin living a life that's happier and fuller and much more in the pattern of what Jesus would have you do. You'll live a happier life. But also those that you've forgiven will live a happier life. If you think back 3,500 years ago or so, you think back to the story of Job. Satan caused Job to lose everything he had. When Job needed the support and the love of his friends the most, all they could do would be to accuse him of the most egregious sins. At one point, Job told his friends in Job chapter 16 and verse 12, he said, "You are miserable comforters." The people that he should have been able to count on, that he should have leaned on, all they did was discourage him. Even God became angry at Job's friends, Job 42 and verse 7. However, as you look at the story of Job, Job was not completely blessed, nor were his losses restored to him, in fact, twice as much as he had, until he prayed for his friends in Job chapter 42 and verse 10. Now, that's just mind-blowing to me. It boggles my mind. What a great deal of humility and compassion was required by Job, because he was able, commanded to by God, and he was able to pray for his friends, to pray for those that wronged him, to pray for those that had hurt him, to pray for those that neglected him at the time when he most needed them. If we want the mercy of God this morning, we must extend mercy. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 7. One of the first, almost in the first words that Jesus uttered as he began his public ministry in what we commonly call the Sermon on the Mount. If we want the forgiveness of God, Jesus goes on to say in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 14, again in that Sermon on the Mount, we must extend forgiveness. Folks, holding grudges can cost us big time. It is very difficult to forgive and to lay down the grudges that weigh you down. But it is in keeping with what God has commanded us to do. It's very difficult, especially when the same sin has occurred over and over, or the same person has sinned against us and wronged us over and over again. But as we talked about yesterday, changing the focus from what was done to me, changing the focus from what was done to me to what I did to Christ, that changes everything. This morning, I sat on my porch, I thought about the beauty around me, and I thought about a nation, though, that I don't see it any more divided in a manner that as a student of history I ever see it this divided, perhaps dating back to the Civil War. I think about all the elements that are dividing and are hurt in this nation. There are those that are genuinely hurt and distressed with feelings of betrayal inside the black community over actions that are undefendable and inexcusable involving some police officers, law enforcement. There's an element of all people of all races who seem to be using these horrific events that have hurt people. They seem to be using those as an event to opportunistically to loot and to burn our cities and perhaps even try to destabilize our government and our nation. Still exist in our nation this morning are those that are so ignorant as to make their decisions on how they feel about someone just on the color of their skin. There are those that feel like that the actions that have taken place are only aimed at one race or the other. These and other fissures that are driving wedges between us seemingly have no solution. The solution to these and to other issues that divide us appear complicated by legal matters, appear hard to do when you look at the news and watch the news, and they are going to be. But the solution to these and to the other issues that might be dividing us this morning is for us to begin in our lives the process of forgiveness as God has forgiven us. That means to start by those that are closest to us, to forgive them. That means by looking out to those, and when I watch the news, instead of being angry at those that are doing things that seem to be hurtful to me, to my family, to those of my brothers and sisters who have a different skin color than me, I've got to let the process of forgiveness begin. To those that are even trying to loot and to destroy our cities, I've got to begin the process of forgiveness as God has forgiven me. Now that only takes place, and I can only affect that by living and by sharing the love and the forgiveness of God that He's given to me. If it's to take place, it's got to begin with me and with you. We cannot look for change in the world until we begin to facilitate change in our own lives. I've got to make the commitment in my life that I'm going to love and forgive as God has loved and forgiven me. Now, when I do that, that won't immediately change the world. There were 12 men 2,000 years ago who Jesus said go out and change the world. One of them completely turned into a traitor and neglected him. 11 others had struggles in their lives, one of the three closest on the night when he was most needed by Jesus Christ, deserted him, denied him. But those 11 men and those that they would influence, they went out in love and in unity, in spite of all the bad things that was happening, in spite of all the people that would say horrific things about Jesus, the Son of God, in spite of all the mistreatment they would receive just for one reason, not because of bad things they did, but because of prejudice against them, just because of the love they had for Jesus Christ. All but one of them, historically it said, would give their lives and die for loving Jesus. Today, Jesus calls on me, not because I'm white, not because I'm an American, not because perhaps some of you watching are black, not because some of you watching are Americans or Filipinos or from Libya or Kenya or Uganda or nations around the world, but because Jesus Christ died because he loved you. He wants us to love others. May God help us to move forward each day in our individual lives in love and unity. And may that be a way that we reach out to others. May we have a happy and a blessed Thursday by beginning to live without carrying the grudges and the hurts of yesterday. May we look forward lovingly to a time when we can love like Jesus. Now, loving like Jesus, you know where it led to for him. It led to the cross. But by his death, it led to me having an opportunity this morning to be forgiven, to wake up in this morning to begin, as I prayed, to know that God has forgiven me, that God loves me, and that no matter what may happen in this world, that God has prepared a place for me. He's prepared a place for you. He doesn't care about my skin color. He doesn't care about my nationality. He cares about the fact that by accepting the beautiful gift that he's offered me, by serving and loving him obediently, that the promise he's made to me, he can look forward to fulfilling for me. And I can look forward to receiving a home with him forever in heaven